Hey everyone, we're just gonna wait a little while for the room to fill up.
What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, WaLLrus, there's a long delay between here and YouTube.
For sure. Yeah, I'll have it up. Just so everyone in here kind of quickly knows, again, it might take us just a bit to get situated, but we are going to be dual streaming these on YouTube as well. That way it's a little easier. So if people have questions, they can type them in the live chat there. And that way it's easy to kind of get feedback. Sometimes people don't want to jump up and just hop on the mic. So that'll be a nice way. So for yourself, for anyone that's interested, they're more than welcome to jump on there and ask questions. There is a bit of a delay, so it'll take us a bit. We're only going to speak in the spaces, but we're going to live stream it so that people can record or take clips. And that way makes it easy for engagement. That way people can hop in and ask questions or comment. Who's this Nas guy?
What's going on, boys?
Hello everyone. Good evening.
What's going on?
Just been chilling in the spaces. This is my third space in the last 2 hours.
There's a lot going on in there.
Well, yeah, I was listening to Richard, caught the last few minutes of him when he was in Mario space, and then he jumped over into David's space, and literally I've just been listening to Famous after David jumped off, and then I thought, oh, better go. It's time.
Yep. Yeah, I was in there listening, and Famous was doing a great job. If everyone gets a chance, man, they should definitely message him. I just sent him a DM saying he was doing a great job. His demeanor in there and jumping into unfriendly waters, he was speaking very well. Usually he's a little high strung. I like Famous, but he definitely put on his orator cap and strolled in there and is really representing well for us. And then just so you know, HEXiCAT, Sada, or I can't, is that's Maverick.
So, dude.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Yo, you catch that little bit on Goxteam's media? You were talking about Famous?
Yep. Yeah, I heard you guys jump in there.
You got to, man. It was like, and the funniest thing is, you see the PFP? It was like, it was literally like a little green troll, like actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just messaging HEXiCAT right before we jumped in here. I was like, damn it, I want to get in there and cause a problem, but we got a show to do.
There'll be plenty of more opportunities, my friend. I was watching the live follower account, and it's weird shit happens. Like, so it's going up like one or two, like Richard's follower account, and then it just drops like 5. Then all those people come back, and it's, I guess, and then it's like up 9. It's some crazy stuff going on, man. But people are listening, even if it doesn't seem like it. They hear.
Right. All right, we're at 105. HEXiCAT, you want to jump us in?
Yeah, let's go for it. I definitely have a delay on my phone, so I might have to figure out a way to do this better next time. But let's go. I want to welcome everybody. Welcome to Liquid Lunch. I will be your host, HEXiCAT. I am the social media manager for Liquid Loans, also the host of HEXiCAT Chats podcasts. For those that don't know, Liquid Loans is a borrowing protocol with 0% interest, no repayment schedule, no admin keys, no governance, and is immutable. It's truly true DeFi. Just to let everybody know, we are dual streaming this on the Liquid Loans YouTube channel as well. So feel free, if you're kind of shy, you don't like talking on Twitter Spaces, you can go there and you can type in a question, or you can listen there. There just is a lag. I'd like to welcome WaLLrus. He's part of the leadership team and a huge advocate for DeFi. WaLLrus, you want to step in and say what's up?
Absolutely. Appreciate it as always. Thanks, community. Most of you guys in here know me, but definitely wanting to make sure that we are speaking to the broader community. It's something that, Trillion and Mav and, Famous have been talking about recently, that we got to make sure that we get people in front of what we're doing, right? So we're not only trying to speak to the community, but make sure that we're growing the community as well. So appreciate the shout out, HEXiCAT.
Absolutely. I'd also like to welcome Trillion and Maverick. They're going to be guest speakers at times. They're both some savvy guys. They have great insights. They've been in the spaces before and through Telegram, but they definitely have great insights in regards to markets and have a broad macro view on crypto in general. You guys want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, guys. So I do a lot of like data analytics. I was a data engineer for over 10 years. I worked at some of the biggest companies you could name, like really private, basically the sensitive data, that kind of stuff. It turned my attention to the markets, but yeah, just put it out there. I'm completely unaffiliated with anything, so I'm just gonna speak my mind.
Awesome. Maverick?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm also in the IT for business space with data analytics and all kinds of business intelligence disciplines. Been really tuned into the crypto space lately, and applying that to chart reading and macroeconomics and all that, etc. Really interested in the space, and kind of new to the space, but it's kind of a good fit for me. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great, man. Thanks for coming. We appreciate having you here. So, WaLLrus, what is up with CeFi and DeFi? How do we cut through the BS?
Oh, is there anything going on? It's been an absolute roller coaster here lately. So I'm sure most people have at least a relatively, decent handle on the idea of what's going on with SBF and FTX. There's an infinite number of rabbit holes to go down through for some of their political connections and corruptions and WEF. That's really not too much what we want to jump in here. This is really about educating on sort of how this affects our space and then what we can do more broadly, better decision making, these things, and again, like as Trey and Maverick said, they're not affiliated with us specifically or really any project. And that's really why I wanted to bring these guys in here, is they have a balanced view. They're very knowledgeable. They look at things a little different than probably most of us who are, have either been, you could have sort of siloed in one community or another. They don't really come from that same viewpoint. So they have an alternate perspective. And again, they're very intelligent. So we're happy to have them here as well as our buddy Nas. So it's just sort of a broad overview just to kind of set some of that framework. So for those that don't realize, SBF is the CEO of FTX. And again, through some different structures, also Alameda Research. Those guys in some form or fashion have lost funds, stole fraudulently. Again, we're not 100% sure, and it's probably a combination of all those things. And it has caused a giant hole in crypto. And the contagion from that event is affecting centralized entities everywhere. We're seeing a lot of slowing of withdrawals where it's hard for us to be really confident, I think, at this point in any centralized exchange. And this is something that most of us in the community have been screaming about for a long time, right? Anything you hold on a centralized exchange, you're an unsecured creditor in almost every setting. You are not only taking your position in crypto, you're also betting on that institution and whatever jurisdictional risk. And if that middleman had another middleman that was holding coins on another exchange, which is part of what has caused this ripple, where we see BlockFi, multiple other hedge funds or different capital entities, other exchanges holding funds on FTX. So I put this in a tweet, but just for framework, like this is how bad this bet can be and how bad centralization can be when there's not transparency. If you held coins on BlockFi, if you held coins, at least some of these coins in crypto.com, you had exposure to multiple jurisdictions who could then seize, take all your coins, multiple centralized exchanges who could then take all your coins. So you had 4 parlays on your bet, your position in crypto, that if any of those legs fail, you go to 0. If with FTX, a lot of their jurisdiction is Bahama, which is very friendly, and there's sort of minimal in general jurisdictional risk. But if Bahamas had done something and seized, locked down, slowed FTX, your bags would likely have ended up going to 0. If FTX goes bust, as we've seen, your bags go to 0. If you had held things in BlockFi that held things in FTX, your bags went to 0. If you had been in the US and had sort of counterparty risk to some of those jurisdictional risks, your bags went to 0. If you held stable coins or other projects that had stable coins, then you added that on top. So you had a stable coin, multiple jurisdictions, multiple CeFi. If any of those go bust, your bags go to 0. That's the risk with centralized exchanges, and this overlapping of risk along with leverage and obviously, again, some fraudulent sides. I'm trying to kind of leave that on alone. But when you look at just what that bet was, this is what can happen. And that's why we see this level of contagion. Wrapped Bitcoin on Solana, wrecked because it was issued by FTX. Wrapped ETH on Solana, wrecked because it was issued by FTX. You just see this, again, that word, now I put that tweet out also, contagion. These things overlap and touch things, and they wreck other sources, and you can see this ripple throughout the markets in multiple ways. Again, in the upside, to me, again, and I'm going to let Trillion and Maverick get their comments in again because they have a little different view on these things here. The coins don't go any higher on an exchange. If you have the price of Bitcoin on FTX is the same as Bitcoin in your wallet. All you added was a chance to go to 0. If you held ETH or any of these other things on exchange, they don't go any higher. They can just go to 0. So it's insane, the risk profile of all of these things. And I think that some of that comes from, at least in the Western world, we haven't really experienced a bank run. The inflation that we felt of the dollar has been a slow boiling rather than turning up the heat. And so the idea of handing over an institution funds for some type of yield isn't that uncomfortable with us. We're used to seeing these things in general be relatively stable in some form or fashion. There's issues with Social Security, but Social Security is still mostly here. There's in some degree issues with IRAs and how people view them, but they're still here. Bonds, they're still here. Stocks are still here. So we haven't really seen these collapses where things can actually go to 0. But that is the actual risk, even in more traditional finance, but it's especially a more risky profile in crypto, where crypto assets offer volatility. And then there's also these different entities that offer extreme leverage. So that volatility is much higher, and the chances that these things break are higher. There's that sort of a Bollinger Bands type of view of these things, where as long as they stay inside, everything's okay. But as soon as they get outside of them, it is radically outside of what these systems can handle, and it can break and cascade throughout a system. And that's what we're seeing. So Nas, Trillion, Maverick, and you guys want to jump in on any of that?
I can just talk about risk a little bit. So it's very difficult to actually calculate, and it's proven out by the fact that even FTX, with all of their resources, couldn't do it, and neither could any of these other companies. So when you see a company like Celsius or whatever, and they're trying to offer you yield, and they're telling you get 10% on stable coins, there's risk associated with that. They've tried to calculate it, and a lot of times they're just flat out wrong. You look at the situation right now that's going on, even within Binance, and I've used Binance. I'll admit it. I didn't really get my attention until the whole BUSD thing. I started looking into what BUSD is. So at some point, Binance actually converted all of their holders' stable coins, I believe just USDC, to BUSD. But guess who issues BUSD? Because it's not Binance, it's a company called Paxos, and they have their own disclaimers and stuff like that. We even had CZ on one of the spaces, sorry, not our space, but he was in another space, and he was sort of talking about this, and Kim.com is actually the one who brought this up, and he said, where's the disclosure? So if you're selling this BUSD product on your exchange, there needs to be disclosure. And they're like, oh yeah, it's somewhere, it's on the Paxos website. So I went on the Paxos website, and guess what? Their reports are unaudited. And ones that do get audited, they don't show cash reserves. So even BUSD is sitting in a position where $14 billion, so there's a total of 22 billion, 14 billion of that is locked up past 2026. That's 4 years away from now. They got $14 billion worth of treasuries maturing over the course of the next 10 years. And their cash reserves are about 870 million or 860 million, somewhere in that range. So you see, it's just where the risk gets spread out in a way that it's very, very difficult to calculate. And as long as you're dealing with centralized exchanges, you will have this effect. And that's what makes it incredibly difficult to trace and to calculate. So yeah, just the number one thing you can do, you always see the upside, but if you are able to manage your risk, you'll go much, much further.
Wow, that's really interesting to know. I did not know that about BUSD. Great points. I just want to welcome anybody coming to the room. I know there's a lot of other spaces and stuff going on, so we're very thankful to have you guys here. Welcome. Feel free to request the mic if you want to come up and have a question at any time. We'll keep monitoring it. Maverick, you have anything to offer on this?
Yeah. I just wanted to frame things and kind of, put us in perspective of where we're at in this macroeconomic situation we're in. It's much different than any other crypto cycle we've seen. We've just appreciated money printing coming out of the 2008 housing market crash. And we haven't seen anything like the housing market crash since the 2001 dot-com bubble and, 9/11, which 9/11 only froze economically in the U.S. for like a week and a half maybe. And then, what we suffered from that, stocks went down for 2 years and then didn't come back to where they were previously for another 10 years. That's legacy markets. Same kind of thing happened in the 2008 housing market crash. These are two, different industries, just not a whole. It affected the whole though. 2008 took about 2 years as well, and about 10 years to recover. That's legacy markets. And so now we're dealing with a situation where we've froze economic activity worldwide for about a year and a half, right? And we've printed like double the money supply, and we're dealing with all this inflation now, and it's trickling into much more than just a tech sector or a housing market sector. We're calling it the everything bubble kind of thing. And so that's why it's different this time. I know everybody says it's different this time. Every cycle, every bear cycle, we're going to go lower, we're going to go higher. Everybody says it's different. I think people need to start wrapping their heads around like it is different this time. I mean, you've seen it in the charts. Like everybody thought the bottom was in. I mean, I know people scream that every time, but you can just look at the charts on a weekly chart. We've been below the 200 moving average for months. And that really doesn't usually happen. If you look back in history we usually bottom out and then, bounce off the 200 and then we could start going up, but we've been well below it for months since June. And that, likely the bottom, people thought 17.5, stayed above 19.5 forever. And then now finally we've capitulated below that. Usually final capitulation lasts about 30 days, but still I'm kind of in the camp with all that said. The macroeconomic situation could take longer because I know legacy will take longer, and legacy does affect crypto. It's not, it's not decoupled like people think and all this. And so with all that, we're just getting started here. Now, could we actually, get down to the bottom in crypto faster than legacy? Sure. Can we recover faster than legacy? Sure. But I still think we've got another 6 months to go. If we just, just tank ungodly, before the end of the year, get down to the worst possible case scenario is like, this the 5,000 Bitcoin and all that. Unless we get down that far this year, I'm still going to be, holding some dry powder on the side for next year because I really think this thing can take a while with interest rates hiking, which, extracts money from all equities. As we rise in interest rates, housing market's going to take longer too. And like I said, this is a world economic thing. So nothing short of these countries printing money and whatnot will really pull us out of this any earlier. So be patient. I say gas the truck up, boys. Just don't back it up yet.
Yeah, one of the things that Trillion dropped in there is something that I'm especially sensitive to. So there's a lot of different kinds of risk profiles, right? You can, there's, risk on, risk off, opportunity costs, unknowns. One of the things that especially bothers me is unknown risk, right? Now, we can't always mitigate all those things. But as he was explaining with Paxos and sort of some of this, as you go down the rabbit hole of risk, if you hadn't done the research or honestly didn't even have some understanding, some of us could have read the same context and not had the wherewithal or framework, that a guy like Trillion might have to look at that and say, okay, I can read this text and now know what this means, right? Those things are difficult. I don't like unknown risk. I would rather sort of be obsessive and be very driven, pick a few specific things that I feel that I have the best grasp of them that I can, and then make a bet. That's how I like to make decisions. It's unknown risk that really bother me. So I'm relatively undiversified, sort of compared to general. I mean, there's still levels of diversity in a lot of ways in decentralization, but I tend to be relatively heavy in a fewer amount of projects for exactly what he's describing. Again, you have this issue with the lack of transparency in CeFi, which is really what's, again, caused some of these problems. You have the things that this Maverick's talking about and the way these things pump. But specifically for me, it's when you get to that level, I just don't know all the risk, right? So there's certain commonalities between all these cryptos, but when you start having centralized entities that aren't audited and you start to stack sort of these risk profiles of these things, I don't understand them. I don't like that. I'm especially sensitive to those things. I don't like making bets on things that I can't quantify. I would rather make a bet on no knowledge and be wrong than just have this smorgasbord of possible ways to go broke, go bust, and lose all my funds. It's insane how you can keep going on these things.
When you really think about it, what CeFi tries to do is to try to decentralize risk and centralize the assets.
Exactly, right? So there's, and the biggest thing, and I think that's something that this community really does a good job of, is that, of course, there's reasons for certain centralization at certain places, right? Like, of course, to some degree, you have to have exposure to those things when you onboard. But I think that argument, there's a lot of these cases where they're like, well, you have to use them to onboard. Okay, well, there wasn't $16 billion worth of onboard money in MTX. Like that, this thing that blew up was not because we need these things to onboard, right? Again, all of us have probably used these things in some form or fashion. That's different and a different risk profile and a different exposure than just having all your funds sitting there. So if you're taking $1,000 and you're doing your DCA in and you have to have exposure to some of these things, Kraken, Gemini, Coinbase, depending on jurisdiction, these things, there are some that are better than other. I think that if you look at what Jeff Powell has said from Kraken, you just have to be a fan of that guy, especially compared to what most stances are. He himself, running an exchange, says, don't keep your money on exchanges. And so again, this comes back to, there's a lot of these DeFi tools, but you use the right tool for the right job, right? So I need to, and most people need to, use a centralized exchange in some capacity to onboard funds, use as an on-off ramp, okay? That's a tool for a job. That is very different than saying, I'm going to use this centralized entity to hold all my funds and all my keys and hope that number on that screen is real. That's a very different risk profile. There's, and I just retweeted this. You look at now that these things have gone on, sort of look at how the markets responded. There's huge increase in safe, which is Gnosis for most of us, huge increase in people buying hardware wallets. They just wised up. Hopefully those of us in this room and moving forward, not only will we personally be less affected, most of the people who have been in this community for a long time aren't using these things for those reasons, and I hope that most people had very little exposure. But there's sort of this systematic risk as well. If, again, like those, we talk about these things. When these things go through bankruptcy court, they're going to get sold. When things get stolen by a hacker, they get sold. You also sell the price down, right? So not only do holding these funds on exchanges defeat the whole point of crypto, but you actually increase the attack surface for the entire industry when people use these things in an incorrect way. Like now there's this giant hole. If people hadn't put funds there, they wouldn't have had the same opportunities to affect these things in this way. And this isn't me blaming the small guy. This is me explaining that you can benefit yourself and benefit the whole, right? Like there's a lot of that economic theory, doing what's best for yourself is what's best for the group. So there's a lot of value in understanding these systems. Use the right tool for the job. Like, you know, I onboard and offboard funds occasionally when I need to. I don't leave those money on exchanges. Like use Gnosis, use Graphene OS phones, use dedicated laptops, use hardware devices. You know, use your personal control and sovereignty to hold that value, and then use the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say hi to a few people. KG, Millionaire the Moon, Red Squirrel, Connor, everybody else that's joining us. Like, appreciate you being here. There's lots of spaces going on. Richard has hopped in a few today. Anything you want to talk about with DeFi, with Bank and Freed, FTX, anything going on there? We're talking CeFi versus DeFi. Just feel free to request the mic. We'll bring you up for your question, or you can go to the YouTube channel if you want to type in a question and you're not comfortable speaking. We are live streaming this on the Liquid Loans YouTube channel.
I wanted to bring up something, reports coming in about the FTX debacle. You guys heard about the notion that some funds that were sent for or lobbied to be sent to Ukraine for military aid, some reports are coming in that they actually were like filtered through FTX and then distributed out to Democratic candidates. Yeah, pretty damning reports, but I'm not sure of the validity. But like I'm saying, just hearing this now, I'm not sure if they're rumors or kind of something.
I think when you see the amount that they donated to the political cause, to me, I always I'm less interested a lot of times in the specifics of the event. So to me, in general, if you just said, hey, there's a guy named Sam and his business went bust, I don't really care. I don't really care about Sam, right? What I care about is the industry. So to me, it's what behaviors sort of went into these things. And I think what's really interesting about what Mav just brought up is that, like, this is the problem sorry, I got to do the framing. So, you know, one of the things that when Eric Voorhees was having that debate with Sam is he said something that I think is a really good framework in a lens to look through other things. Do you want crypto to be more like traditional finance or more like DeFi? I would choose DeFi. And it's really for what you just brought up. Part of the issue with central banks, fractional reserves, a lot of this traditional system is they don't have to come ask you for your money. They'll just print it and dilute it from everyone else. Because they have control of that money supply, because they have control of the printing presses, they're allowed to go do things and not have to have the same level of oversight from people that you would like. And it's exactly what's happening here. If you didn't want some of your funds to go there, you should have held them your damn self. If you didn't want your funds being allocated out to XYZ political party, even if you agree with that party, let's just assume you still believe that that thing is working the way it's supposed to and you're a fan of them. Is that where you wanted your money to go? Because if it is, hold it yourself and put it there. Don't delegate your power to these other people and have control of your own money and supply, and you'll control the influence. Whenever there's this is the same reason that bridges get attacked in crypto. They get attacked because that's where all the money's sitting. If people held on to that value, their value wouldn't have been sitting in one giant pot for these guys to manipulate. And what, again, I think is really important, something there very negative went on, right? Whether or not it's the specifics here with the washing through Ukraine, you know, there's enough smoke here. We just not exactly sure what's on fire.
You guys can get a little bit more information if you look into the FTX Foundation. So it's actually kind of amazing about how much they were able to set up and how much they were able to get away with in such a short amount of time. There's a couple characters on there that you're going to recognize, but there's going to be a couple that you don't when you go on their about page. There's a guy named Gary Wang, who's the CTO, and Nishad Singh, who is the director of engineering. No one's ever seen these people. We don't even know if they exist. Like, literally, people who worked in the Bahamas at the FTX, I've never seen these people, can't even confirm their existence. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't care about SBF either, WaLLrus, but I am kind of curious what's going on in that penthouse in the Bahamas. It sounds quite interesting. Millionaire the Moon. Oh, sorry, man.
I was going to say, I didn't even know about amphetamine patches. You guys hear about that?
Not at all. I just heard he has some
sounds funny, son.
Yeah, transdermal amphetamines. This is what these guys were doing. And hold on, let me set a quick context for who Sam Bankman-Fried is. So if anybody's familiar with Jane Street Capital, so this is one of those firms that hires guys out of university and gives them an $800,000 salary. If you work there for more than a few years, you're probably making $4 to $5 million a year on W-2. Like, this is how serious this shit is, and he was the cream of that crop. So just to set that context.
Wow, that's absolutely crazy. And the Caroline girl, I think she had less than a year and a half of experience, and they made her CEO. Correct?
Well, her daddy was Gary Gensler's boss at MIT. Man, it's the MIT crypto mafia. You think they're not coming?
They're always out there. Million to the moon. You got a question, bro? Good to see you.
Yes, I do. I got a comment/question here. I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on advice on how to do this better, which is, I kind of risk of preaching to the choir here. I want to reiterate something I'm sure we're all aware of, which is I believe we all have a bit of a problem here in crypto. Or if we look at traditional finance, the stock market, even real estate investing, everyone is used to, third parties essentially holding, your keys, for lack of a better word. In the stock market, who holds, your stock? It's some third party company that no one's aware of. The mortgage is controlled by the bank, but in crypto, it's, at least the way it should be done, is the complete opposite of this. Not your keys, not your crypto. If you're not self-custodying your assets, they're not your assets. And, I've been recently speaking to some kind of noobs in crypto and some not so noobs. And this idea is unfortunately very foreign to a lot of new people getting in this industry. And so I just feel the need that we all need to, as influencers, people in the community, do our best to really try and communicate how the entire value point, the whole reason, one of the whole reasons why crypto is valuable in the first place is because you self-custody your assets. And if you're not, they're not your assets. And so this is just a very important point that I think we're going to have to work on. And it's a narrative that needs to be changed, because, again, looking at the traditional finance world, this is not something that's it's not an important point that's made at all. So it's just a challenge we have, and I kind of want to get you guys advice on perhaps how to communicate this point better.
Yeah, I'll take a swing at it, then I'll let everyone else. So one of them is, I don't think we did this intentionally. I think it was sort of the early cyberpunk movement, us wanting to sort of separate ourselves from some of the TradFi stuff. But part of it is we have our own language. Like, so many things that people do in TradFi, they have zero understanding of what those words mean, but they have a loose understanding that this is an accepted practice. As you said, I'm willing to bet the vast majority of people who, air quotes, buy stocks don't realize those stocks are not in their name, or that they even get put in a name. I'm willing to bet the vast majority don't understand that mechanic. They just know that, hey, you're supposed to buy stocks, and that stocks generally go up, and that rich people have stocks. That's really the literacy that most people are at there. So I think in one regard, we should be careful of the language. And I have this problem because I find so much of what we're doing here fascinating that I tend to use the language and lingo of the industry. It's difficult for onboarders because even the language they're used to, they don't truly understand. So you have to make sure that you be careful about the language. And the other, I think, directly to the question there is, it's a whole different argument to almost bring people up to a financial understanding. I think to really educate people on crypto, it really is a KISS approach. Hey, if you learn basic responsibility, you're going to have actual control of your money, and it doesn't have to get into, sort of what really drew us in, because what drew us in already drew us all in, right? You're someone who believes in sovereignty, who understands censorship resistance. You're probably libertarian-ish in some framework. You're here. I think probably loosely along the same lines. I'm already here. Trillion, Maverick, the people in this room, we're already here. The financially literate people who believe in sort of these core ideals, that understand what's going on to at least some degree or want to, we're already here. I think that when it comes to onboarding, it's about getting them into the space, and then they'll grow from there. The vast majority of people in stocks have no idea what they actually do, what they represent, or how they function. So I think that this is a bit of, when we look at the space as a whole, I think we need to pivot away from trying to find people like us, because there's not that many, and we're already here. The vast majority of that sort of segment of the world, however you would classify us, we have great penetration there. We talk about, 1 to 5 to 3% of the world is in crypto. And again, so that we think, the early, but if you look at the people who are in crypto, the people you think would be in crypto, we're very, very much here. The early adopters, the people who are outside affected by, censorship or jurisdiction, who are interested in finance. Man, guys, most of us are here. If most of us take our social circle and say, okay, give me the 10 people that you think would be most likely to be in crypto, how many of those guys are already here in some shape or fashion? So I think that we should always lean back on our sort of first principle side of education. But when it comes to onboarding, I think we need to meet people where they are. And some of that is, to RH's credit, the, hey, number go up, get them involved in people. When I first got into the space, I initially had that sort of cyberpunk of, wait, there's money that the government can't control, I'm in. I thought that was interesting. And then where I pivoted quickly was the people in the space, man. Roger Ver, RH, listening to some of these early people participate. Brian Armstrong recently, for Eric Voorhees. There's a lot of people in the space that are, Max Kaiser. The guy's a crazy person, thinks Bitcoin maxi. But if you listen to his ideals, I agree with a lot of what that guy says, and him and I always get his name wrong, Bukele there in El Salvador have done great things. So I think that we should always push the people to participate at the highest level they can. If there's someone who has your state of mind, get that mofo a hardware wallet, try to explain it to them, bring them on and to participate in the best way they can. For everyone else, it's baby steps, spoon feeding, and meeting them where they're at. Because when it comes to educating them what crypto is, most people, we're going to have to go all the way back to preschool and say, do you guys know what money is? That's really what the onboarding process would start for most people. That's very, very time consuming, both on us as individuals and on that person. Takes a high level of expertise. So I think that it's time to pivot the majority of our adoption into meeting people where they're at, who we're trying to bring.
Yeah, I mean,
Super thoughtful. I appreciate that.
This past week's events, and if you look at Mario Nawfal's space, I mean, he's had at one point up to 60,000 people listening in, and he's had a varied number of different guests. But sometimes I think we as a community forget how spoiled we are when it comes to education. That we are actually quite highly educated as a community, and listening to these spaces this past week and the conversations that have gone on, a lot of the times I'm thinking to myself, hold on a minute, you should have been doing this already. Why are you just talking about it now? Why are you pivoting now? You're supposed to be a founder or an influencer. Yet we as a community are slightly more advanced in that respect. We know better security, we know better protocols, we know better tokenomics, we know how certain things are supposed to work outside. We know how to self-custody properly, etc. These things, a lot of people now, unfortunately, they're learning the hard way. So kudos to everyone in this space, and especially our community. I mean, our learning curve is just exponential in that respect.
I just want to add a little bit of crypto hype to the conversation. So, guys, all of these problems that we're experiencing right now, they're caused by the fact that too many people want to get into crypto too fast. So if you're thinking about the growth and longevity of this space, guys, this is it. Like it's going to get huge. There's clearly a demand beyond what the market can even satiate, if that's even comprehensible. But it's there. And I think you got to go back and understand why people use banks ever in the first place. Because money was hard money, it was gold, and that could be taken from you. And so there's what would happen is there's no information stream. So like when gold is stolen, it's melted down and put into a bar stored at Fort Knox. That information's gone. So we created a better system. So now that you can not only just follow the money, follow the information. And this is what's got them all shit in their pants.
It's funny you mentioned that, Trillian, because I was just having a thought earlier on today how 50 years ago the dollar came off the gold standard. Everybody knows about that, pretty much. And if anybody's ever listened to Robert Kiyosaki, you know, for the life of him, he's always going on about buying a gold Krugerrand and sneaking it in, you know, and holding all his gold and silver outside the US because he doesn't want the middleman, the government, to get access to it. And to me, what's happening right now within our crypto industry gives me a similar feeling to what happened back then. You know, we've got all these regulations coming down on us left, right, and center. People are finding it hard to get, you know, access to their own funds, etc. And like you say, history doesn't always repeat itself, but flipping hell, it does rhyme.
And then real quickly, just before I let these other guys jump in, I think this is one that I think is an important framework for ourselves when it comes to centralized exchanges custody, but also this is something that I've used to help onboard in some ways is, as I was saying previously, like that lingo, the words, these connotations, sometimes we forget how much meaning comes in the word choice we use versus what it actually means. So caress, like we almost think, like it almost always thinks of like caressing like another human, that's an intimate feeling word, but it doesn't mean anything about intimacy. Caress is just like a light massaging of whatever it is you're touching there. So many of these words have so much built-in connotation. So when we say an institution, a third party, people deal with institutions and third parties all the time. They have Amazon Prime, they use Google everything, they use Apple everything, they use YouTube, we're on Twitter. I don't think they feel that same visceral reaction that, you know, a lot of the people on this stage and in this room would feel. So one of the things that I've used as a good framework and as a way of sort of punching through that noise is to always try to use things where they don't have that connotation. And to bring up the gold, I've basically told people, okay, imagine that we come back to a time when you basically carried around your gold in your little purse strings, right? You're walking around holding all your gold. That's how you've done all your business. You carry your value with you. And then someone walked up to you and said, hey, I've got a really nice building. Why don't you let me hold all your gold? And then I'll give you a few % more gold at the end of the year. And you can ask me when to come get your money. You can ask me when you can withdraw. I'm going to ask you questions about where you're spending your gold, about why you're taking it out. If you frame it in that way, there is no rational person alive that would walk in that building and hand them their gold over. But we do it every day without a thought because we're jaded because we haven't seen these things break recently in our lifetimes, especially in the West. We do it with banks. So I think one of those things that I've used, I just think it's a great analogy. But when I've described things that way, people look and they're like, wow, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I can't believe I do that. But whereas if you just say, hey, do you put your money in a bank, everyone just says yes and moves on. So I think it's an interesting framework, but that's some of those things that I've used to punch through that noise. And then, sorry, Mav, I know I stepped on your toes. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, you're good, man. I just wanted to talk about the path of regulation and what we got to look forward to. And I think it's a big win, you know, exposing SBF and all he was doing with a centralized exchange. But the path of regulation was pivoting from the bit license lobbying. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but bit licenses would effectively illegalize decentralized finance in the United States anyway. And Sam Bankman-Fried was like the #2 donor to the Biden administration, the Democratic Party. And so with taking him down and showing that, you know, you guys don't need to start regulating us. You need to start regulating them, the centralized exchanges. And with that regulation, I think will come with, you know, regular audits of their, you know, their books and everything, seeing that they're not going to screw people over for their deposits and everything like that. But yeah, with the bit licenses would effectively monopolize these centralized exchanges without regulation to them first. And I think first and foremost, it's showing that they need regulation and not us. But another thing to segue off that is, you know, the Republicans won the majority in the House. So if any regulation of bit licenses and everything else is still on the books and, you know, looking forward to try to push through, then they're going to have a hard time doing that with that win in the House. But what a great day, though, for us to win this battle with that coming down the pipes, man. That would have effectively screwed us and monopolized them in effect, because Sam Bankman-Fried knew that, you know, DeFi was taken out of his pockets. and he knew that was the way to capture all that market share and everything else. Well, on the other side of the coin, we got CZ as well, like the #1 exchange, and he saw him coming up the ranks and taking his market share. So the crypto industry hit Sam Bankman-Fried and CZ from the other side, and we just we took it down. I think it's a great win, and so I'm excited about that. Bucking the system and taking the heat off us to regulate the fuck out of us, which shouldn't be done.
And there's a small parallel here that I've seen in the legalization of marijuana. I'm relatively sure it was Ohio, but it was one of the more Midwest, Northeast states here. So for those that aren't in the states, the legalization, marijuana is illegal at the federal level, but states have been pretty much left alone to go through different steps of either decriminalization, allowing it for medical use only, or essentially full-blown recreational use. So to Maverick's point, some ways we have to be careful in this regulation and make sure that we truly understand what it says. As he was saying, you can get to the point where you have some regulation that sort of opens some doors, but it still ends up with choke points, where it goes through, where it very much centralizes and limits the amount of exchanges and sort of monopolizes them. They tried to do this in a few states where they were like, okay, we're going to legalize, legalize and then license these things. But it's the same body who didn't want you to have it in the first place are the ones now controlling the licensing. And they were going to limit it to something like 10 licenses a year. So all they were going to do was, by making this transition, they were still going to hold the keys to the castle and wildly control and monopolize and essentially censor other users as well to force them to go through certain channels. And if you do that, then you basically still have control. So it's definitely something we've seen this same posturing and I would say strategy, sort of basically not removing barriers or attack surface, just changing barriers and attack surface. So it's something to be very diligent on as we watch these things change, to sort of look at the playbook that they've used in previous ways to sort of control and manipulate markets.
Yeah, that's a great take. And Maverick, I completely agree. 100%. They were going after the little guy, regulating all of us, when they should have been looking at the decentralized exchanges and really looking into the people that control the on-off ramps, because that's where all the corruption seems to be happening. And contrary to a lot of people that, like my mother, that think crypto's falling apart and they hear all this stuff in the news that really don't know about it, I think this is one of the best things that could have happened to us. I mean, we're already in the bear market. Why not have it happen now? You get all the bad actors out. RH, like Nas just mentioned, they I think had 27,000 people on Mario Nawfal's stream the other day. We're getting tons of exposure. RH is getting out there talking. People are actually listening to him because they have no choice to. Everything he said that would happen is happening. I honestly feel like that there's a little bit of a tide turning. If we can just last a little longer, get through this bear market, see what happens with the midterms and elections over the next year, feel like we're in a good place. I'd like to get everybody else's opinion. Like, do you think we're in a good place, or do you think this is bad for crypto?
Crypto ain't broke. Crypto's just fine. That's the whole thing. It's these regulatory things, all this other shit. You guys keep going up the chain, right? You guys are going to run into a company called Silvergate. And Silvergate is owned by BlackRock, right? And so it's essentially, they have this thing called send leverage loans. This is who's actually providing all of this collateral against the Bitcoin. They have over 100 exchanges that are their customers, and they hold $8 billion worth of, and they market as sellable assets, which is Bitcoin. It's so hard to even go through disclosure to even figure out how much Bitcoin that even is. But yeah, like ultimately at the end of the day, this idea that has worked for stocks, options, all this like legacy stuff that, you never really truly owned to begin with. There was a different challenge posed with Bitcoin because someone actually has to hold it, and none of these guys trust each other. Like, as soon as somebody gets money, like why did Sam go to CZ for money? Because CZ had all the money. What they went to Three Arrows Capital when they had the money. This is what interlinks this whole nasty web, and it comes crashing down together as soon as one strand goes, one strand fails. So yeah, it's the overarch. What they're trying to do is trying to fit crypto into the old paradigm. They're trying very hard. And the deal really is that like, why does BUSD, why does Paxos own so much treasuries, $20 billion of treasuries? Most of them don't even mature in the next 4 years, right? What's the point of this, right? So I think it's like, kind of a backdoor, or sorry, like a closed door agreement, kind of smoky rooms and that kind of shit going on. And it's always been like that. See, that part is nothing new. It's always been like that. And I think we're sort of beginning to form that like immune system where we could at least cordon off the damage and not participate in it. That's all you got to really do. Don't participate in it. The regulations, for every time somebody called Richard Hart a scammer, nobody mentioned SBF. Nobody mentioned Do Kwon. Do Kwon's still out there doing the same shit. They just had, I had traced him through to this group called Key Capital. Today, we saw that South Korea actually busted the co-founder of Terra, and the company was called Chi Capital. And if you know, Key, like QI, is actually pronounced Chi. And the same day, today, Key Capital site is down. All of their Medium posts are gone. So you could just see how it creates this terrible domino effect when you try to centralize all these assets. And to WaLLrus's point is that's the security. If you hold your stuff, I hold my stuff. It's so much more difficult to compromise than if it's all being held in one place. The example I can give you is, have you ever left your cell phone, like your main phone, at your friend's house? You know that feeling you get where like something's just not right until you go and you get it back? Why not with crypto? It's the same exact thing. It's just we've been taught that everything's virtual, everything's on demand. But look, guys, you want to own things and you want to protect the stuff that you own.
This is something that I think is interesting, that in our particular, sort of the RH loosely people that sort of have really kind of learned crypto and gone through the ropes with him. This is something, all the Hexicans, close your ears real quick. I actually don't, as much as Hex is a great product and great code in a lot of ways, I actually think that one of the best thing about the community is the community, but not in the gummy bears and rainbows and everybody love each other, but actually that it came in a way that it was sort of siloed and sort of has its own sort of cyberpunk movement, because it didn't come through the sort of mainstream channels. So it does everything a different way. This is the reason that hardware wallet security, self-custody, it's so prevalent in the community, because it's sort of homegrown in so many ways. And because the original people that were big in Hex weren't Bitcoin guys. this is something that's brought up for, again, a lot of these same reasons where you see this interconnectivity of massive amounts of capital. Most of the people who are rich in Bitcoin were already rich. Most of the people who are rich in Solana were already rich because they had a bunch of capital to get in early, or they were able to come in, buy a position, and they don't have the same necessities to sell when things get low. There's other things that factor in, but essentially that's where a lot of it comes from. A lot of this in this space doesn't have that. If you look at a lot of the early players, there's a lot of staking mechanics and other things. Most of the cats that have been here for a long time were not already rich. And it's really brought in a very different organization as far as how the community communicates with each other, where their capital comes from, where it comes from, and where the education is. And it's actually one of my personal favorite things, and why this is, despite having a lot of interest in doing cool stuff, this is where I spend the vast majority of my time, because these are the conversations that get held. To everyone's point, when you go in other spaces, you do not hear these things discussed. You don't hear the same discussions around DEXs and liquidity and bridges and risks of centralized exchanges and talking about security. That isn't the forefront. I would say that probably half the discussions around Hex have nothing to do with the Hex contract or the code, but about handling your business in crypto, being educated, being safe, staking ladders, behaviors where it's wholesome, for lack of a better term. That is my favorite thing about the space. And I think that that's what we can do to onboard and push these things out in the future. Keep doing what we're doing, keep bringing people in. This is a great opportunity for us to win some hearts and minds. There's a lot of people that are down, that are going to come into space for different reasons. To Naz's point and HEXiCAT's points, there's, some of these Twitter spaces are on Fox News that are getting discussed. It is making a lot of noise. This is as much as this is sort of a dark time for a lot of people, this is a chance to be the shining light on the hill and keep educating. And then I'll get off my soapbox, let Maverick and Million jump in.
I mean, just off the back of that, in the previous space that we were listening to, got David Gockstein's when Famous was speaking, and Trillion jumped in there as well. The guy that he was answering, literally, you could tell he didn't even know much about PulseChain because he thought, you know, the PulseChain devs are designing pretty much every project that's launching on PulseChain. And Famous started telling them, look, we've got stable coins, we've got RV forks, this, that, next thing, yada, yada, yada. You know, even started telling them about Ethereum Fair and ETH fork, ETH Power fork. You know, if you look at Hex, it works on there because it's immutable, nobody can change it, etc. You know, again, we take these things for granted because we've been learning about it for over a year now, and you know, whereas outside communities, I mean, it's gobbledygook to some of the things that we say.
One thing I quite found funny was they had Hunter Biden coming on that they've been apparently scheduling for weeks with, I think his name was David Kushner, the guy that made the movie Tron. So they've been scheduling that for a long time. And then they happened to get on their podcast the same week that FTX goes up. And then there's all these possible political connections, but they couldn't ask any questions regarding that. They could only ask him about his art or about, you know, the movie industry and their Cryptosaurus project. But that was pretty interesting and funny.
And then it was I think Daniel Kushner, but anyway, and then they wrote a hit piece on Mario. Fox did. They were working in the audience, waiting for a sound clip. As soon as Hunter got off, Mario said, "I'm never doing that shit again." Like if we're not free to ask
I'm really
questions,
interested in how this shakes out with regulation and Sam Bankman-Fried's punishment, and seeing how, like, you know, he was the number 2 donor, got some friends in high places. What actually happens to him? We're really going to be following this story closely. Yeah, what Kevin O'Leary was speaking on this, and he was asked, "Hey, Kevin, you know, if Sam Bankman-Fried comes to you in like a couple of years and he says, you know, hey, I'm got another startup, would you invest with him?" Kevin O'Leary took a few minutes to pause, and he was like, "You know what? Yeah, I would." Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, what's this going to be, like a slap on the wrist? I don't know. We got all these reports coming out that this rabbit hole's getting deeper and deeper. So I just hope, man, they don't pivot off and really just try to push the regulation through that they were trying to anyway. I think this is still a big win, though. I think the momentum has shifted big time, and it's the outlook is good, but you know, I just don't trust the government and all that. But we're just getting started with these big entities failing. The economy's just getting worse. Other things are going to fall apart, and you know, more blood, sweat, and tears. But you know, at the end of the day, it's going to create more opportunity than we've probably seen in the crypto cycle. So, I mean, in everything, in legacy finance, and crypto, and the housing market, everything. This economy is just going to have to come home to roost. And with that, man, I'm excited. You know, so I'm excited for all those things. And I think on the regulatory stance, we've shifted the momentum in the way that they were trying to take it. So I'm excited for all these things.
Yeah, I mean, this too shall soon pass. It's pretty much what Richard keeps on saying in all these spaces. You know, he was like, seeing it before. It's happened before. It keeps on happening. It'll keep on happening again. People just need to learn their lessons from these things. And as a sacrificer in the PulseChain ecosystem in multiple projects, it sounds biased, but I'm flipping bullish as hell. All these entities are failing because it just makes the case for all our products so much better.
Wait, you guys want to talk about the counterfeiting, the token counterfeiting that Sam was running? See, the problem is that a lot of players, especially with
and everything's so much cheaper. Get ready.
Well, if you were a billionaire, would you want
real quick, Trillion?
Yeah, man.
Sorry, brother. I was just gonna say, HEXiCAT, will you speak or drop Maverick and bring him back up? I don't think he can hear Trillion. And then go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so the counterfeiting, right? So what Sam was doing is essentially signing on a project, giving them terms, pre-saling a counterfeit version of their coin, pumping that price up to whatever the hell, and then basically dumping on that project. And these are projects that people invested millions of dollars into personally, years of their lives, and they were just absolutely wrecked by this sort of trading activity. So I don't honestly understand Kevin O'Leary and his perspective. He sees this guy as a genius. That's like from his interview, it's very clear. And what he basically said is that, yeah, I would let Sam trade, but I wouldn't give him any control over the assets. Sam is about 1,000 times smarter than Kevin O'Leary is. You think he'll take that? Hell no. He'll find a way. A lot of these people, you'll see, they will come back in one way or another. It'll be under a different brand, a different name, whatever. It's because they're what Kevin O'Leary was actually trying to save FTX, because what they don't care about FTX or any of their customers. They want to acquire that talent. Not a lot of people can do this, and for whatever reason, they're convinced that he can. So, he did, but in reality, what they were doing wasn't even very special. Maybe in the beginning he made some great moves, got enough funding, but he clearly, something kind of fell apart there. So, I don't think we should endorse people who are counterfeiting coins, who are ruining people's lives with these projects just for a pump and dump and can't even manage their own risk. I guess he missed that class. But these people are going to be around. The most important thing is to have enough of an immune system, us as users, as participants in this ecosystem, that we can identify it and just avoid it. It's really that simple. And a lot of times, like I'll hear like in Cosmos, things like that, people for some reason love these like layers of abstraction and complexity. And yeah, there are places, like there's a place for everything. Like Hex is not the end all be all. There's other things you can do in crypto. Like the ENS community is blowing up. Like what Liquid Loans is doing. That's a fundamentally critical part to this entire thing. So it's not that Hex has to be the one size fits all for everything. These are tools, and it's just a matter of time before people recognize how to use them in their best and most meaningful ways. But until then, the guys that have been around are going to try to game the system.
There was a couple of things about that comment. 100% on everything you said, and I think to sort of, again, I always like to come back to, I treat almost everything like it's a bet in poker, right? So one, there's a reckless side of what Kevin said, sort of just intrinsically in his thought process. But just quickly, the idea that a wealthy, educated man would say that in a public forum without even, when we don't even have an idea yet on the full level of what degree of fraudulent theft exposure we have, is just so reckless. And I don't really like the word triggering, but that's a very demoralizing thing to hear for a lot of people, and to still have trust in certain systems. And I don't even necessarily mean FTX. I mean systems in general, powers that be, to just say that, yeah, I'd probably let him run it again. Man, that guy just blew up $16 billion worth of value, and people are getting a crash course on what being an unsecured creditor means. Maybe we don't give that guy a second chance yet. Let's just sort through the wreckage and debris before we start trying to build that guy up. And then I think further to your point, when you look at SBF and that decision, there's a few variables here. One, he's as brilliant as everybody thought, and he's eviler than what any of us probably think. Two, he's not that good at this stuff, in which case you're propping up somebody who's essentially just a fraud. Or three, it is all fraud, and he's essentially feigning stupidity. And this is something that I brought up with his debate with Eric Voorhees, was to not underestimate that guy, whether through IQ, emotional intelligence, fraudulent connections, in some capacity. That guy is very, very capable. Do not think that because he stuttered next to Eric that guy is not a snake and that guy cannot do damage. Again, I did not say that in the context of knowing what was going to happen with FTX. But this is something that I think we've seen in a lot of cases when you look at other political institutions. You can feign a lot of malice with stupidity. And if people are billionaires or worth hundreds of millions, it doesn't mean that they're smart at everything or that they don't say dumb things, but they are capable people in some form or fashion. Do not underestimate those people and think that they're just stupid. Even if they truly are, they're connected enough to do damage, and you need to treat those people with some level of concern and respect as far as what they can do.
This brings up a lot of questions about Do Kwon, man. Like everything you said, why isn't that guy in cuffs? I guarantee you it's the same type of scenario.
Right. Strings are being pulled here. It's just going to be interesting how it all shakes out and what really was the cause and intentions behind all this.
I was on, I think it was Mario Nawful that asked yesterday on one of he tweeted a question out: should we be talking about politics, or should we only just stick to crypto in the space? And the fact of the matter is, crypto was invented because of governments and their inability to implement what they say they're going to do and good systems. This is why we have this industry in the first place, because people do not trust the government, and that's why we need alternative systems. Yeah, I think, all the newcomers in the space, it is an educational learning gap, definitely. I mean, I myself, my dad, my granddad, we were all born into these systems. We didn't know any other sort of monetary systems. We didn't get much financial education either about alternatives. We've had to find out the hard way, like many of us have. So there is that educational gap between the generations as well.
And I'll tell you, that's the one area that I feel like government has truly really failed us. Like the government's supposed to really protect us, protect our rights, and they've completely failed protecting our rights and for financial liberty. Guys, we live in the most abundant world, the most efficient, effective, most highly capable version of this world that we've ever had. How are we not all living in abundance? And it's because of this. These policies have not protected us. They have not served us, not one fucking bit. They've tried to centralize all the money. Guys, just the fact alone that they can print the entire money supply in 2 years, that's theft. They've stolen from absolutely every single person who's ever tried to earn a dollar. That's got to end.
Absolutely, and they try to take it a step further and like basically geofencing United States citizens with this these bit licenses where we've already seen it. Like you're not able to participate in Binance and et cetera, et cetera. They did this in the poker industry. Effectively made it illegal to do the offshore casinos and all that stuff. They want to keep the money here in the United States, and DeFi and crypto and everything else is a world economy. So they're just fighting for position, and really not. It's really not serving us. The regulations they're trying to put down our pipe. So, but we're bucking the system and fighting back, and it's a good thing.
This is a tactic of all monopolists. So they cross the bridge, then cut it down behind them so nobody else can join. This is what they do.
Yep.
And that financial learning curve is also, as I'm sure these guys can attest to, and people listening who don't have the same macro view as like Trillion and Mav, that are not only are they just savvy guys, but like they're genuinely interested, right? You can hear the passion when they speak about some of these rabbit holes. Something that I've experienced is you have, even those of us that have, if you don't have 1% or high net worth individuals around you as you grow up, even if you sort of have a general level of literacy, hey, don't max out your credit cards, don't take out too much loans, hey, I'm going to save 20% of my income, these sort of basics. Whenever you get a chance to actually start operating on a sort of an investment thesis mind state, you are looking at trying to purchase vehicles and wrap them up through an LLC, you're trying to set up trusts, you're trying to protect yourself from litigation, you're setting up businesses, you have even high five. If you have 50, 60 grand to invest and actually deploy, probably 1% of the world ever has the opportunity to actually do those things, right? So even if you have smart people around you that have done well, they have a decent salary, they probably have no idea how to handle those things. And especially as some of us in this space, we have a bit of the, Jordan Peterson uses the term I like, unearned knowledge. If you're a doctor and you go make whatever it is, you're usually surrounded by those people and you sort of basically follow the pack, right? There's enough wealthy people there. They probably have a general degree of literacy that makes those things successful. But especially as we work more remote, as the specializations increase, those of us that are in crypto that have made outsized gains in these things, you can very quickly outstrip what it is that your knowledge base has. So that's one of those things I just really, really encourage people to be interested in. I know sometimes it can be dry if this isn't really where your passion is, but understand that if you put enough effort into these things, you can leverage it into doing other things. And I know we're kind of coming up on time here, so I'll wrap up my kind of final thoughts in general. Most of the time, these things, sometimes it's, and I think we've all touched on it a different way here in some way. They don't want you to learn these things. They don't want you to pay attention. They try to discourage participation on these things because they want you to be quiet and go back in line. So even if being the greatest capitalist and being a billionaire or these things isn't intrinsically what it is you want to do with all your time, if you get this stuff right, you'll be able to do more of the things that you like. My favorite thing isn't crypto. As much as I love being here and everything else, I'm sure you guys seen those posts and everything. I love coaching my youth football team. Right now, I'm in Mexico traveling on the coast. I'm very, very family oriented. These are the things that I highly, highly value. I can do more of those things. I can travel and work and do these things because I got this one thing right. It's not because I'm the smartest guy on the planet in these things, but these things scale. These things leverage. It's the reason that people in tech, make more. It scales, right? So learning these things is a great way to make sure that you can do more of whatever it is that you're truly passionate about. Stop letting other people extract value from you. Stop working on somebody else's dream. If you get these things right and understand, you're going to have more time to focus in on whatever it is you're good at, and the whole world will be better off. Because I would rather that you didn't stand in line, wear a name tag. I would rather you do whatever it is that you're badass at, because then I get to interact with you either through a service or the goods you produce. I want everyone to go do whatever it is they're best at. That's the most net value. That's the abundance that Trillion talked about. And I like dealing with fun, cool people who are building cool stuff. So go do whatever it is you love and build cool stuff. And then that way I can come sharing it. So I'll let everyone else get their closing thoughts in.
Absolutely. Yeah. It comes down to the things they don't teach you in school, the things they don't want you to know, because a lot of people would be out of business. I mean, you just go down to a simple example of, your local mechanic. You don't learn how to fix your own car because, well, they would be out of business if everybody knew how to do it, right? Well, in the financial markets too, they don't want you to really know what you're doing with investments and all that stuff because they'd be out of business. There wouldn't be so much money to be had. So that's why I'm really addicted to these spaces and DeFi and everything else, man. It's just level up in this thing. You get this thing right. WaLLrus is exactly right. You can chart your own course and get your freedom back, basically, because that's what we're all trying to do.
Definitely. And all I do is just follow WaLLrus, to be honest with you. I just go wherever he goes. That's my plan of action now.
Yeah, I could piggyback a little bit off WaLLrus said, guys. The number one reason that I believe people don't take their profits on time, why they can see a 200, 100x, 1000x gain and then be down in a bear market, it's because you don't have that next thing to roll that money into. So my advice, become your own brand. Share with us. Do that thing you're amazing at, the thing you're passionate about, man, and it'll take care of itself. Like, you just got to trust it. But right now, that's that time. This is the one time I think that you could build generational wealth multiple times in your life. Even if you lose it, you could get it back all in one lifetime. So do your thing, do what you love, become your own brand, and just join up, man. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Yeah.
Trillion, Liquid Loans, WaLLrus. Shush, dude, how you doing? I don't know if you recognize me. It's me, RoomHex from PulseChain.
Of course, brother.
How we doing? I got a quick one. How can we change that, right? How can we create something that not gonna affect people, not gonna affect everyday Joe to invest money and trust, right? The people still don't see it. You know what? I did say that yesterday on the chat. I've joined Mario's spaces quite often, listen how they react to Richard's talk, right? On many occasions, man. And I do remember a couple of months back when there was, reacting to Richard when he was talking, etc. Now, their ISIS changed 360, man. They start realizing that Richard was saying truth from day one. But how can we create something? How we can create exchange, decentralized exchange that will not screw the people and be really easy to understand for everyday people? How can we do that?
100%.
Go ahead,
WaLLrus. I was just going to say, we talked about it before that there's nothing they can do but listen to him now, because everything he said would happen, could possibly happen, is happening. So whether they hate him for his brashness, his bragociousness, his freaking Gucci bags, everything he says in those spaces, people have to listen. And it makes sense. So I think honestly, this is just to emphasize again, I think this is one of the best things that could have happened for our community and for crypto in general. Get these corrupt people out now while we're in the bottom, get a true bottom, like Richard says, and then it's all up from here in the next year or two.
You know, yeah, go on, WaLLrus. Go on, man. Go on, brother.
Cheers. I was going to say one of the other things is, I think, again, back to decentralization, is there's a lot of voices. And I've said this a million times in a lot of different capacities. But not everyone is on the same level. Not everyone's interested in the same things in the space. There's so much going on, right? So if you're talking to someone and they're traditional marketing guys, that's their vibe. They're just off on crypto, man. That's someone to tell, hey, go listen to Trillion. Trillion's going to speak that guy's language, right? He comes from a data analyst side. That's their cup of tea, right? Put those guys together. I know, Jim Rat got in his little spat with RH or whatever it is, but Jim Rat's a goon. He's a cool guy. He's new. He's young. He's sort of flippant. Sam has his own take. If you have guys, like, pair them up with people you think they'll be receptive to in the beginning, right? There's a lot of different vibes in the community. If you have someone that, doesn't take these things seriously and you almost got to give them some entertainment, there's a lot of guys that are more, I don't want to sound negative when I say this, but like cheerleaders. They're more just like bravo, like they're just funny. They've got they've got funny commentary. There's a place for that, if their very analytic number go up, K4K, Top Gun, a lot of these guys get into some of the moon math and structures. I'm not a very good influencer in a lot of those ways. I just speak very level. But if people are kind of calm, composed, logic driven, then they'll probably resonate with me. If they like audio and they got to like digest everything, send them over to HEXiCAT, let them listen to his podcast. We've got Arabic speakers.
Hold on.
Korean.
What are you talking about? You're not a good influencer, man. Remember when I was DMing you to start your own shit and stuff, and man, when you talk, people are listening. People like, I said to you, new people in here listening because I understand your voice. This is what we need, as you said, when the people talk technical language, my man, some people get super fucking confused. On the other chat where the famous was talking now, the guy asked, what does mean do your own research, right? And the guy started talking to him like in technical language, like he didn't understand. But when you talk, man, you're an alpha motherfucker, I can say that.
WaLLrus is actually a unicorn. He does it all.
My man.
Guys, like, here's we got to remember, like, people are not their ideas. We have to sort of like allow people to be wrong and then to come around and be right and not treat them like the old person they were. Like, we are not our ideas. Some of us are wrong. Some of us can be, more wrong than others, let's just say. But yeah, just keep giving them a chance, keep, giving them a shot, and eventually it'll capitulate.
Can I piggyback on that?
Please.
I hear you guys talking about, I've been listening for a little while now. You talk about building the perfect thing to let's save people from pain. And I have just been in crypto. I've been in crypto for a long time. I don't typically participate in conversations actively. But I think one thing that's important, and Jermaine, right now, I think this is the best time. I've been in crypto since 2016 that I've been in crypto. And the reason being, the conversation has exponentially moved to a smarter level. When we're going through good times, the only thing I hear is the next 10,000x coin, the price of Bitcoin, charts on YouTube. Now people are talking about decentralization, taking custody of coins. And the great teacher, I think the lesson that we need to take from this is the great teacher in this is pain. You can preach till you're blue in the face. There's nothing simpler than Uniswap in terms of swapping coins. Any of these swaps, Sushi Swap, Pancake Swap, you name, you pick your coin and you swap your coin, or you set up a limit order in Uniswap. I think everybody knows how to do that. I think this whole, you have to have a technical degree from MIT to operate one of these swaps is just nonsense. People will learn from losing their money. And there's no if, ands, or buts about that. That nothing you build is going to stop people from losing. And losing is good. It's through the loss that they learn. Nobody here took decentralization seriously. Nobody bothered to understand self-custody or what Bitcoin was built for until Sam Bankman-Fried, till Mt. Gox. So while we bemoan these times, we need to look at the good things that are the silver lining that's coming out of this. That's all I want to say about that.
Amen.
Indeed. I have a new plan for adoption. We're going to get Marlon a bullhorn and just let him scream on the corner, because that's the message I'm here for, brother.
Indeed. After hardship, there's always ease.
Another thing what I want to say to you, Marlon, is when I joined this community beginning of this year, right? Do you know how they start to talk to me?
No.
About security. They didn't explain shit about Hex, man. They didn't explain shit about PulseChain. I've been listening to language that I didn't really understand. Papa Bona, WaLLrus, Shush Dude, I do remember your voice, brother, and other people in the chat. They start talking to me. Do you know what's hardware wallet? Do you know what's security? Secure your coins, right? Not your keys, not your coins. This is how this conversation starts. And this is what is beautiful about this community, my man. The people are calling, Richard scammer this. Okay, what I can say, let's wait another year or two. The people realizing what he was saying, really. When I listen to Richard, I don't want to see him. I want to listen to him. I don't care about shiny objects and whatever. He's drawing the attention to the community because no one was listening to him when he was normally dressed, well-spoken, right? No one. Is the OG in marketing. My personal opinion, I run 3 businesses in different sectors, but I do understand marketing. That's another thing. But the beautiful thing about Hex community, PulseChain community, Rich Your Heart community, let's call it that way, is they want you to own your shit, right?
And so does Satoshi.
Exactly. But people who own Bitcoins, they change that completely, right?
Well,
if I go to other spaces, I joined Bitcoin and I was listening to the spaces in there. Not even one person was talking about hardware wallets and secure your shit.
But that's what I'm saying. This is so good now, is that you're starting to see mainstream people talk about security. And we never saw that without SBF. This is finally getting through to as Richard calls them, the plebs. The plebs are finally starting to wake up. This whole Richard's a scammer, Hex is a scam, this is a scam. They stopped with the nonsense and now they're focusing on, maybe I should own my coins. Scam or no scam, if SBF holds them, it doesn't mean anything to me. If it's 10,000x and I get and they steal my coins, what difference does it make to me? And now that's mainstream. I'm not saying it's mainstream all the way, but I see that on a lot more. I'm seeing guys that and I follow a lot of YouTube or watch a lot of YouTube, and the guys were always make sure you trust a regulated exchange. Make sure your coins are in an exchange in the US. Those were the messages. Use BlockFi, use Celsius. And they weren't listening to Richard when he's saying you're gonna get wrecked. You're gonna get wrecked. They didn't understand self-custody. And to me, this boils down to just simple laziness.
Exactly.
This is being lazy and lazy-minded.
But Marlon, look at this. It's now. Because one of the main exchanges just collapsed and screw people for millions and billions of dollars, right? But Richard was talking about this for decades. As I said, I joined the beginning of this year, and we had this on the main PulseChain chat. Security, number one, security, hardware wallet, secure your shit, know your man. And I can warranty that was from day one they create that shit. And then when the onboarding tool in our community is a security to secure your shit. Don't invest into anything. Go and buy your hardware wallet and invest and hide your shit. Take it away. Don't allow anyone to own your fucking keys. Is it not beautiful? My man, come on. Tell me I'm wrong.
I teach Bitcoin to a lot of people in my local community. They want to get involved. And I tell them it's a 2-3 step process. The first thing we talk about is understanding the nature of money. When you get into crypto, that's vital.
Beautiful.
And I would suggest you guys follow this method too. People need to understand, where does money come from and what is it? Because 99% of the people you meet, if they're not in crypto, they don't know money. And I tell people, if you know how to run a business, Elon Musk understands how to build a business. He does not understand the nature of money. So does Warren Buffett. They know how to make money, but they don't know where it comes. They don't understand the true essence of money. What is it? Then once you understand that, then you need to understand security and custody. Who owns it? The money, whether it be gold, Bitcoin, dollars, whatever. Who owns it? How do you custody it? And then you talk about crypto. But until people understand money, they will not understand the value, because they'll be left with, well, why do I need it? What's the value of it? Understand the value first, the value proposition of owning your own asset. I tell people all the time, the only thing you will own in this universe is your crypto. Nothing else do you own. Your home, you don't own it.
But if you do it correctly, Marlon, right?
No, even if you do it correctly, you will not own your home. Don't pay the taxes to
No,
the governing
crypto. I mean
authority.
crypto. You own the crypto if you do it correctly.
Oh, yeah, you own the crypto, and that's it. You don't own the draws on your behind. You don't. The
Hey,
police
guys,
can strip you down naked and take your clothes, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Hey guys, we're coming up on an hour and a half. We're just going to wrap things up in a little bit. Marlon, I just want to say, Marlon with 6 followers, following 34 people, that lurks in the shadows and doesn't speak a lot. Highly appreciate you coming up. You have a lot to say. I think you should participate more. I don't know what community you're a part of, but you found your way to our chat. We're big into Hex and PulseChain. I hope you are too. But, you know, we're not all maximalists here. We listen to other people and other chains, but you have a lot to say, so you should participate more. Awesome, man. Appreciate you coming up, answering questions, or giving your comments. WaLLrus, anything you want to add just before we do the wrap up?
No, man, I thought this was a great space. A lot of good discussion. Thanks so much for Trillion and Matt for coming up. El, Marlon, great speakers. Nas, as always, man. Just appreciate you guys, man. Thought this went great.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate Nas coming in and co-hosting. Trillion, Maverick, thank you for coming up and offering your insights. You guys are smart. Millionaire the Moon, offering questions. I see some other people in here, Red Squirrel, Dylan. Everybody, please, every week we do this at 1 o'clock on Wednesdays, Liquid Lunch. When you see the ads, or the posts, I should say, go share them, like them, get people in here. It's tough when there's all these spaces going on right now that everybody is like joining. But, you know, we're glad to have everybody here. Thanks for stopping by. Go check out the Liquid Loans YouTube channel. Matt's always putting out great content, educational and informational stuff. Check out the HEXiCAT Chats podcast on Spotify, Amazon, Google. Go check it out. I'll give new guests every week. Have Cabana on this week. Next week's going to be Crypto Heartbeat. Go check it out, and we'll definitely be doing this every Wednesday going forward. So go in, check out the other spaces, see if Nawfall's still going on, and RH hops into any, because it's been great with all this collapse of FTX going on. So he's hopping on chats and finally getting his word out. And hopefully we'll have a great one. Everybody, we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure being with you.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for giving me a voice. Thanks.
Thank you.
Read the white paper if you haven't read it yet.
Take care, all.
Cheers, boys.